speak about this piece specifically because it is more of the work that I've been doing recently, but it's also a bit of an experiment and something that's new for me, so I'm excited about the opportunity to try it out. So I've been fascinated with smoke lately, in part because of the ambiguity of it. There's something sort of dangerous about it. There's something sort of ritual and can be skewed as positive as well. And so I started trying to find ways to incorporate it into my work in a way that would not just be a visual representation of it. I sort of stumbled on a technique that was popularized, according to Wikipedia, by a surrealist painter in the 1930s called fumage, which essentially is just French for smoke. And literally, I'm using the flame itself as a kind of brush. So like charcoal, you instead of taking a burnt thing and making a mark, this is taking the flame itself and gently depositing it, let's say sooting the paper. So what I've done here is I've started with a drawing, in this case a sketch in pencil, and I'm using that to create a kind of masking for the paper. So in this case, I've scanned my drawing in and I've used a plotter to cut that out of a low-tack vinyl, which then becomes a kind of sticker for the surface of the paper. And this, so that you can actually envision what it is to be using a flame like a paintbrush. The flame goes up, of course, so sometimes it requires a bit of a modulation in the direction that you're actually doing it. But I'm dragging that flame across the exposed areas of the paper, and that sooting leaves a trail that kind of records the motion of dragging the flame across the paper. So once that's done, you'll see here the kind of edges of that masking sticking out. So this is one of the two pieces of the diptych covered in the masking, and then with the smoke on top. Oops. So then, this is, since it's not really, sometimes it burns the paper or scorches it, but basically it's a very fragile layer on top of the paper, just like a thin layer of charcoal. So then I'm carefully pulling back that masking to create those sharp edges that give me more variability in the actual edges and how big and how small they can get. So this is one of the pieces with most of the masking taken off. And then these are the two pieces pretty much finished. Now, one departure, one thing I was excited about trying, experimenting with in this project, was I was really intent on having the immediacy of that paper, those rough edges, the places where you can see burn marks and scorches, not removed from the viewer. So instead of having them framed behind glass where there's a bit of a distance between the two, I wanted to see if there was a way to just have this floating off the wall. So that's a little difficult when you've got paper. You need to protect it. It's obviously in a public area. So I tried for the very first time experimenting with resin. And what you'll see, these are some past examples of works that I've done just on paper where you can see some of the different versions of the smoke. And this kind of shows you a bit of what I'm talking about in it, recording the motion of dragging the smoke across. But with this one, I really wanted to attempt coating it with resin, which is tricky because paper can warp and buckle and have all sorts of funny things that happen. And those did crop up. But what I think you'll see in the final version is, hopefully, that free floating feeling where the paper just comes off the wall. And I was able to pour the resin on and buff it to a kind of matte surface so that you have more of the feeling of just the paper and the materials that are there for you to experience. Sorry. So anyway, I wanted to thank Ray and Jim and Courtney for all of their hard work and all their cooperation in spite of my experimentation and the leaps of faith they took with me in trying to, see that through. And thank you all for coming.